Next type of reproduction is sexual reproduction. Now, this type of reproduction occurs with the help of two germ cells. That is, we require female gamete and a male gamete. And these are the two germ cells that are required. Now, for this process, there are two forms. That is, one, it can take place through gamete formation or other through fertilization. Now, what happens in gamete formation? Now, gamete formation, the gametes are formed by meiosis. We have already studied that. And the chromosome number which is there, what happens in meiosis is the chromosome number is reduced to half. And here the haploid gametes are formed. That is, n number of gametes are formed. Next type is diploid. That is, in fertilization, diploid zygote is formed. Now, how diploid zygote will be formed? That is by union of male gamete, which is haploid, and female gamete, which is haploid. So, one male gamete and one female gamete, when they unite together, so N and N becomes 2N. So, from haploid, the zygote becomes diploid. And this zygote, it divides by mitosis, and then embryo is formed. And then this embryo then give rise to the fetus, or you can say a new individual. Sexual reproduction in plants. Now, in plants, the sexual reproduction takes place, that is in flower. And the flower, it should have the male and the female part. Now, here in the flower, there are four whorls which are there. First is the calyx, then you have corolla, then we have gynecium, and we have androecium. So these are the four whorls in the flower. Now, out of them, two are the essential whorls and two are the accessory whorls. Accessory whorls are nothing but which are not used for any reproduction purpose, but instead they are used for protection purpose. So the calyx and corolla are the accessory whorl, and the androecium and the gynecium are the essential whorls, because these two perform very important role in reproduction. Now, calyx, if you will see, this is the green part which is there in the flower, the lower green part which is there. This is also called as sepal. And below that you will find a small stick-like structure that is called as the pedicle. So we have the pedicle, the calyx, which can also be called as the sepal, corolla, which is called as the petal, which actually protects the inner structure of the flower. Then we have two things, that is gynecium and the androecium. Now, gynecium consists of stigma, that is this upper part. Then we have the style, this line which you can see, the green color line which is going, and the ovary. Inside this there are eggs, or you can see the ovules are present inside. So we have ovary, style, and stigma. All this three part includes gynecium. Then we have androecium. Androecium is made up of anther. Now in the sides you will find that small minute structures are present. So these are called as anther, and they are attached to a stick-like structure that is called as the filament. So we have the anther and filament, which together forms the androecium. So these are the two parts of the uh, flower which are used in reproduction, that is gynecium and the androecium. These are the male reproductive part, and these are the female reproductive part of the flower. Now in some flowers, that is like for example here in this hibiscus flower, male and female part are present in one flower only. But here if you will see in papaya flower, female part is different and male part is different. So these are called as the bisexual whorls. That is, if androecium and gynecium are present in the same flowers. So hibiscus is a bisexual, and if it is present in separate flowers, then it is called as unisexual. So how the reproduction happens in the flower? So in angiosperms, there is double fertilization that takes place. So now we saw that there is male reproductive flower part of the flower and female reproductive part of the flower. So here we have style, stigma, and ovary. Now what happens is, because of pollination from the anther, the pollen grains, the anther burst, and inside the anther there are pollen grains which are present. So because of pollination, the pollen grain comes and gets attached to this stigma. Now during the time of pollination, this stigma becomes sticky so that the pollen grain can easily attach itself to this stigma. So here it gets attached to the stigma. This is the first step which happens. Next, what happens is, as the pollen grain gets attached to the stigma, inside you can see a tube is formed. This tube is called as the pollen tube. Now what happens is, from that pollen grain, the pollen grain will burst and two male gametes are released. You can see here two gametes are there. So two gametes are released from that pollen grain. And now these two gametes, it then goes down towards the ovary. Now here we have the ovules where the eggs are present in the embryo sac. So now what happens is, with the pollen grains which were there, they burst and the gametes are released. Now the gametes, here you can see it reaches towards the embryo sac. Now inside the embryo sac you will see that there are antipods which are present, there are polar nuclei which are present, and there is egg cell which is present. There are also synergids which are present which protects the egg cell. So now one polar nuclei which is there, now here there are two, so उसमें से एक जो है that comes and fuses with the egg cell. So one unites with the egg cell, the other nuclei which is there from this second one, it goes and attaches to the polar nuclei. So what happens is, the egg cell which is there, the egg cell, this type, it forms the zygote. Afterwards the egg cell and the egg and the male, that is the pollen grain, the male gamete which has been given, so those two combine together, zygote is formed. This is called as the fertilization which happens here because of the egg cell and the male gamete, the fusion of egg cell and the male gamete. Next we have the polar nuclei. So this thing, that is polar nuclei or antipods which are present, so this will form the outer covering of the food. So the fertilization, that is the zygote which is formed, it forms the seed, and the outer part which is there, when this will fertilize and then when it will grow, so this part will become the fruit part of the uh, plant, that is the fluffy part of the fruit that you can say which we eat and which we consume, and the seed which is there, that becomes from these egg cells and the polar nuclei. So these seeds are formed. So this formation, now this will then develop into the fruit. So this formation, or you can say this type of reproduction, as there is two male gametes and fertilization is taking place, so that is why this is called as double fertilization. Next is sexual reproduction in humans. First is the male reproductive system of human. So the male reproductive system, now here if you will see, you have the urinary bladder which is connected through the urinogenital duct. Now let's understand the different parts. First we have the penis, then we have the testes. Now here you can see these small round structures, these are called as the testes. The outer covering which is there, that is called as the scrotum. Above this you can find some round structure, coil structures are present, that is called as the epididymis. Then we have the urinogenital duct which is connected to the urinary bladder. We have different glands also in this which secretes their secretion. So first is the Cowper's gland, then we have the prostate gland, here you can see, and seminal vesicle. These are the three glands which are present. Then this line, that is this tube which you can see, that is called as vas deferens. We also have different ducts. So this one is the ejaculatory duct and this is the urinogenital duct. Now let's understand what happens here. So now in male reproductive part, the gamete, that is the male reproductive gamete which is called as sperm, that is produced. So now where it is produced? So it is produced in the testes. So inside the testes there are many structures which are present, that is called as seminiferous tubules. Now these seminiferous tubules, they are made up of germinal epithelium, and through meiosis they produce sperms inside this. Now when the sperms are produced, they are not motile. So when they get stored in this epididymis, the sperms are produced here in the testes, which is called as the seminiferous tubule. So inside here, the sperms are produced and then it is sent here in the epididymis for storage. Now in the epididymis, they are stored, and here one line, this is called as vas efferents. So from vas efferents, they are then sent forward. So from here, the sperms are sent forward through this vas deferens. Now, various duct which are present in this, they secrete their secretions into the sperms. So when the sperms, they reaches here in this part, so here the seminal vesicle, it secretes its secretion in the ejaculatory duct. So when the sperm reaches the ejaculatory duct, it gets the secretion of the seminal vesicles there. So that is why the sperm should, so that the sperm should be motile, it should be fluidy. So for that reason, the secretion is there. Then the sperm is moved forward. When it reaches to the urinogenital duct, so the Cowper's gland and the prostate gland which is there, it then secretes its secretion into the urinogenital duct. And when the sperm gets here, so they get the secretion of the prostate gland also and the Cowper's gland also. And then from the penis, the sperms are given out. Now the sperms, when it is thrown out of the body, it is called as semen. Now why it is called as semen? Because it is consisting of the male reproductive gamete, that is the sperm, as well as the fluid which have been ejaculated, that is through the seminal vesicle, the prostate gland and the Cowper's gland. They have given their secretions, so that is why that becomes semen. So sperm then becomes semen. It has the fluid content also and it has the gamete also. So this is what is the male reproductive part of the humans. Now here you will see the scrotum which is there. So this scrotum and the testes, it is present outside the abdominal cavity, and this scrotum, it protects the testes from any type of shock and injury. Next is the female reproductive system. Now the female reproductive system in humans consists of ovary, oviduct, uterus and vagina. Now if you will see, there are two ovaries here and two oviduct here. So we have a pair of ovaries and a pair of oviduct. We have a uterus and we have a vagina. Now what happens here is, from the ovary, that is now inside the ovary, there are millions of oocytes which are present. So after maturation, that is after the age of puberty, from this ovary or from this ovary, it can happen from any ovary, one oocyte matures. Now why it matures? Because of the hormones which are secreted in the female's body. So one ovary matures and it is released out and it goes into the oviduct. So one oocyte, it matures and forms the ovum, and here it goes into the oviduct. Now oviduct is like a funnel, it has many cilia in it. So now the cilia, it pushes the oocyte forward. Now the ovum which is there, it waits here for some time, that is around 2 days. It will wait here 2 to 3 days. That is called as the ovulation period. So here it will wait, and why it is waiting? It is waiting for the male gamete to come and unite. But if the male gamete doesn't come, then the ovum which is there, it is then transferred into the uterus. Now in the uterus, there are endometrial lining which are formed every month. Now these endometrial lining, along with the oocyte which has not been united with the male gamete, so that is released out through the vagina, and this process is called as the menstruation. So this is the female reproductive system which produce the female gamete, that is nothing but the oocyte, or you can call it as ovum also. Next is gamete formation. Now both the gametes, that is the sperm and the oocyte which is formed, they are formed by meiosis, and the sperms which are produced, they are produced in men, and it starts to be getting produced after the maturity, that is after puberty, and it will be produced till death. However, in women's, the eggs which are produced, that is the oocytes, they are already present with the birth, that is around 2 to 4 millions of immature oocytes are present. But after the maturity, that is with the maturity, beginning of maturity, the eggs which are there, or you can say the oocytes, they are released every month, and it will be released up till menopause, that is up till the age of 45 to 50 years. Now menopause is nothing but the stoppage of the functioning of female reproductive system, that is the oocytes which are there, they will not be released from the ovary to the oviduct, that is called as the stoppage. Now why it stops? Because the secretion of hormones which are there, it is reduced, there is no secretion of hormones which takes place, so because of which menopause occurs. So this is what is the gamete formation, how two gametes are formed, that is the male and the female gamete. Now next is fertilization. Now the fertilization is nothing but the formation of zygote, and from the zygote the embryo will be formed afterwards. But how zygote is formed? So the zygote is formed by the union of the two gametes, that is the sperm and the ovum. This is called as fertilization. Now fertilization, it takes place inside the body, that is it is internal in humans. So now what happens is, when the semen is ejaculated through vagina, so the sperms which are there, it starts their journey from the vagina to the uterus to the oviduct, and one of the sperm will go and it will fertilize the ovum which is present in the oviduct, and after the fertilization it is transformed into the zygote, and then the embryo formation starts and the development of the fetus will start.